Hey, this is Robert of MayflowerBookshop.com, and I'm coming back to you to talk about a couple of things about Comet Leonard. I gave quite a big talk about Comet Leonard, and I talked about the perihelion. Comet Leonard was discovered January 3rd, 2021, and will reach its passage of the sun January 3rd, 2022, coming up. And it's very interesting because the sun will be at 13 Capricorn, and I talked about that. But Comet Leonard itself, at Christmas time to January 3rd, will be traveling through the tropical astrology that I use mostly, traveling through 15 degrees Aquarius to 21 Aquarius. And the importance of this is very interesting, especially in light of the solar versus the lunar, the spiritual versus the material, the spirited versus the formative forces. I mean, you could say between male and female, maybe, but that wouldn't do it justice. So this is what I wanted to tell you, that this whole Christmas time, solstice time, Hanukkah time, this time of the solstice and Christmas, which is also the time of the Saturnalia and the birth of Mithras and Krishna and Apollo and probably 100 so-called solar heroes, like people who have awakened the sun in their heart to love all humanity and every living thing on the planet. That's a big mystical jump for some of you. But one of the things I'd like to point out is that the comet itself, on tropical astrology, which normally I use, the comet is traveling at about 15 Aquarius, which is where the first major black hole was discovered. Huge black hole that's associated in my research with psychology and garbage and pollution, and transforming alchemically and through scientific and mystical biodynamic ways, transforming toxicity and poisons into something healthy. And yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly talking about how some people are trying to get rid of the meat industry and have, fake meat or meat that's produced by very weird methodology of birth cells from animals. They're growing meat in laboratories. So there's no healthy relationship to the soil, the rhythms of the years, the cycle. It's a huge problem. Yeah, I don't have the time now to go into all the materialistic difficulties of our modern scientific materialistic age and the difficulties of our modern spiritual scientific age of trying to discover the subtle bodies that are, like, for instance, the plant is in relationship to the earth and the water and the darkness, and the plant, like certain plants like nettle can attract subtle homeopathic iron from 70 miles or way more miles. It can pull the iron toward it. And everything's in relationship to everything else. And modern materialistic science is trying to separate everything from everything else so that the plant or the animals they grow have no relationship to these subtle rhythms underneath the earth, as well as the subtle and gross rhythms of moon cycles and full moon and new moon, and the rhythms of the planets and the rhythms of the day and the rhythms of the month and the rhythms of the year and the rhythms of planetary cycles of 12 years and 21 and 30 and 84 with Uranus. I mean, they don't have that relationship, which makes us fully human. The human being is in a midpoint between everything below and above, everything within and without. The human being is a perfect midpoint. So the only thing I wanted to really tell you right now is that at one point you could say that astrologically the sun would be this blatant physicality of leadership getting a new message of what's happening to the planet and where we're going to go and what everything we do, how it affects everything. And but from the strict comet point of view, it very well may be bringing a message of the Aquarian age and how to transform negativity to positivity, pollution into healthy compost. I mean, Rudolf Steiner said that of necessity, because of the lack of eating food that's grounded and rooted in the earth, transforming plants that transform minerals into healthy proteins and minerals and vitamins in the plant, that the plant no longer has to do that work because of chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers, nitrogens, chemicals. The plant just grows too fast and is prematurely spiritualized from the earth. And human beings are prematurely entering spirit and being thrown out of their bodies or numbed out and shrinking way inside due to the noise, velocity, speed, chemicals, drugs, medications, and many other factors. The earth is spinning a little faster these days. We have a sense of speed, wanting to travel to Mars, wanting to go into outer space to discover new life when we can't even discover how to keep life going on Earth in a healthy way. There's kind of this escape velocity, speed thing. This is a whole nother conversation. I've had a lot of talks on meditation. Today I just want to say that if you have any planets at midpoints of Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio, a lot of the elders of our generation have Pluto in Leo. Other people have it in Scorpio. And I see that, I'm just saying the fact that by January 20th, the whole idea is that it's a little difficult to get this out, and I don't have a team of experts. And I have to find time to research this and think about it. You have to think about these things a little bit. So what I'm thinking is that from the solstice to January 3rd is 13 days, which is equivalent to the 13 moon cycles, 13 new and full moons of the year, which is associated with the mother cultures of the Big Dipper, Great Bear Mother, which I talked about in the previous talk on the comet. And the comet is just like slamming down into our hearts and into the underworld of our unconscious. From above our crown chakra, there's a message. I talked about this in the other talk I gave, and so now I want to talk about when you go 12 days after the solstice, 1 day for every month of the year in the solar cycle versus the moon, which is often associated with male, female, or anima, animus, or spirit and mater, mother. You know, it's not limited to the male, female thing. And when we talk about the 12 days, we go to January 2nd, which used to be a big holy day for people, you know, January 4th, January 6th, the Epiphany, and the three magi find the baby Jesus, and it's the day that, according to the Christian myth reality, yes, you heard that correctly. It is a myth and it is a reality in a way, depending on whether you're talking about the etheric body or the astral body or the ego body or the physical body. I mean, you really have to read H.P. Blavatsky's Key to Theosophy and States After Death and Rudolf Steiner's Way of Self-Knowledge and Outline of Esoteric Science. You have to read those books to really realize these several different, 3, 4, 7 different bodies, levels of consciousness that one can still in stillness be aware of. So my major point here in this talk, if you know me by now, you know I'm trying to give you a little bit of the environment around what I speak of. Because all the modern scientists try to isolate, let's say if they're studying a plant, they take it away from the earth and the subtle breathings underground, as well as the subtle rhythms of the planets and stars and cycles, right? They take it away from that. And I'm trying to include this idea with the fact that we could have talked about the spring equinox and the first full moon after that, or we could have talked about the fall equinox and the first new moon, or is it the full moon? See, we could have talked about that. Same with finding sacred days after the solstice and after the summer-winter solstice, where you look at the first full moon or the first new moon. Which one do you do? That's another conversation. But right now I want to talk about from solstice to January 3rd, the perihelion. And it's a mystical fact that this comet's discovered on January 3rd and the synchronicity that it would be at perihelion January 3rd. I mean, it's a definite indication of 13 days after the solstice, which is a lunar cycle. It relates to the 13 new and full moons. It's like the some kind of message of the divine feminine, Sophia, the wisdom of all matters, that anything that matters, anything that's spirit, is more the principle of the Father and oneness and stillness. Our minds looking at it, our mind stream continuum and our heart mind looking at this metaphysical astrological problem I'm presenting and insight, that is something, that's the earth between the sun and moon. That's another subject. So what I'm saying is that if you have any planets at 15, 14, 15, I mean, maybe a couple more, a couple more before, a couple planets, 3 degrees before, but 14, 15, 16 Aquarius to 20, 21, 22 Aquarius, the comet is directly striking this. And that is part of the Aquarian age for honoring the song that permeates all things in matter. The song and the rhythms of the seasons and the plants and the animals and the birds and the butterflies and the honeybees, trying to see how all these things are necessary to the wholeness of our life. If we lose the honeybee, which Rudolf Steiner predicted was a huge danger, Blavatsky did not predict that. She does come up with lots of things that Steiner later talks about, but he warns about the danger of losing the honeybee, that we'd be near the end. And due to pesticides, there's a huge problem in toxins in the food, and the honeybees are disappearing, and a lot of foods would disappear when they don't pollinate. That's a whole nother problem. So all the problems are not limited to how much money you have. Although, yes, that's very important. All the issues of the outer world are very important. But the inner life is the only thing that's going to bring us lasting happiness and the wisdom to have a healing or a mending of the problems with the world that has lasting value. So I want you to look at your astrology chart, get an astrologer to get your chart erected in the right way, and see if, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you have planets at 15, 21 degrees, and that would be a strong indication of this awakening of the Aquarian impulse. What house is Aquarius in your chart? Mine's the midheaven, my calling and career. But other people might have Aquarius in the first house where they take it personally, their quest to be part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of all humanity. The second house might be the way you make money and how you help others make money. The third house might be associated with communications and networking. Everybody is a brother and sister. The fourth house might be helping people to home in, eat good food, find security and protection from the storm, find a secret garden. The fifth house of normally Leo might indicate, if you have Aquarius there, the idea of giving up yourself or finding a self that could work with others and not always work freelance or separate from others. And Virgo would be the exact work you have is contributing to a humanitarian cause and to the highest hopes and wishes and dreams of humanity. And that the seventh house might be that you can't do it, but you know somebody who can, and you have this partner or friend. I'm just making this up as I go, but it's kind of true. And also that your inner self would be very Aquarian, but the outer self may not know what to do. That's seventh house, Aquarius. Eighth house might be you have to die trying to help people before you can really help yourself, or you have to die helping yourself before you can really help somebody else. And the ninth house is to really help educate yourself and others, and maybe some travels that concern these future tidings. And the 10th house, it could be your career. 11th house, you're just naturally there. Pisces, 12th house normally would be that you create a secret space, sacred secret, semi-secret space that is a transformative space of healing. This is one way to look at it. Whenever you look at the planets, they would have a direct effect too if you had planets in that sign of fixed signs. The problem with the fixed signs is you get stuck in one thing and you don't know when to stop. Or you don't know how to start anew. But I wanted to say that we could also say that the 13 moons from the solstice are the 13, when you have King Arthur and the 12 knights, King Arthur is the number 13. So number 13 is either Judas or the Christ, Jason and the Argonauts or the betrayer. That's a whole nother conversation. So a couple of people asked me to comment a little more on the comet. And I do believe that this comet is a comet cleanser. It's purifying the astral, the etheric, and perhaps the physical. At least we're addressing problems. We may not have the answer. Living with the question and living with the problem of today is a huge step in healing, mending, amending, resolving, and going forward. Certainly as we get past January 3rd, and especially as we get past January 4th and 6th after that. And as we move with Jupiter going into Pisces, carrying ourselves into March, April, May, when Jupiter goes into Aries, we're going to see a wisdom. We're going to see much wisdom and know-how and daring and bravado of healing the problems of the world. I think there's a problem when we just want to fight people and we don't want to work with them to bring healing and mending and forward motion, that we've learned to only fight. Rudolf Steiner, in his apocalyptic revelation talks, really gets into this serious problem of the future, of the war of all against all. Everything's trying to fight everything else for its own ego position, rather than trying to take a look at what's good for the whole. What would be good for the whole of the family, the whole of the community, to all of our friends? How could we help everyone we see in a month? Rudolf Steiner pointed out, and Blavatsky had her own way of doing it, that if you look at, if you're meditating and you take a look at everyone you've seen in a whole year, everyone you see in a whole year. Now, some of them are tight, periodical, like every day, every week we see somebody, every month we see somebody. Some people we see once a year. But everyone we see in a whole year, if we could hold all of them in our mind at once, we would start to see a clear picture of who we are as our big self. We're all those things. Other people that would see those same people would see something else. They wouldn't see what you see, good and bad. So, or provocative or antagonistic, or healing or good, progressive, they wouldn't see that, We need to be great students. Like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. We need to be the student that can see the teaching and teacher everywhere. So astrology is a sense of timing. You look at your natal chart and you look at where the planets are now, and it can give you a really good idea of what's going on in your life. What's the challenges and opportunities. Like astrology tells you what time it is. If it's time to tell a joke, time to grow, time to work, time to sleep, time to challenge, time to be challenged, time to let go and give up. I surrender, don't shoot. I think I have a song about that. Sometimes you can't surrender. You have to really work on, completing the project, completion and wholeness. And Aquarius is a peculiar sign that has come to understand the sufferings of just trying to get ahead and make more and more and more. Aquarius knows that at some point you have to surrender with Pisces and give up. But Aquarius is respectful of everyone's individuality as well as one's own. And that relationship between upper and lower, higher and lower, inner and outer, spiritual ideal versus practical reality, and there's a breath that weaves those two together. So, I've been talking for 20 minutes. I thought this would be a 5-minute conversation. I wanted to tell you that this whole solstice Christmas time, it's critical that we're aiming for Aquarius, and this last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius was a big impulse for the coming years, the next couple hundred years, but especially these next 12 years, 3 years, this year. It's critical for the future evolution of humanity. If we're going to survive, if we're going to just turn into just animals on each other, are we going to become angels, which may not be good for the planet, for a human being incarnated? You don't want to become an angel a little too quick. Everybody's into ascension. We're going to ascend fast enough, and we were in spiritual worlds before we were here, and we'll be there soon enough. So the whole thing that I've been trying to prepare, the whole thing that I'm trying to share with everyone is the descent of one's higher self and the spiritual teachings into our everyday life. If we're stuck, we need to ascend. But if you're okay a little bit, let's bring the highest down into everyday reality. Thus, my joke is that I'm into the descended masters. Jesus and Buddha, all the heroes, Martin Luther King Jr., Jimi Hendrix, Bobby Kennedy. The Beatles and whoever, pick your heroes. Abraham Lincoln, Buddha, Pythagoras, Mithras, Hermes, Zoroaster, the India Brahmins, the Dalai Lama. Pick your heroes. Everything that we see that's beautiful is just a piece of the imagination of our true self. May the imagination of your true self spark you to rest assured, to be still and know, and to go into the world bravely, being everything possible, forever friend, and eternally happy with knowing the truth, which is kind of a radical wholeness, stillness, as well as knowing the love that we're made from the whole world and we belong to the world and we should share. Some people have too much, some people don't have enough, but without a mind, it doesn't matter. If you don't have a mind, you won't know how to spend it to enrich your inner self. So this is part of the Aquarian idea, is needing some kind of sense of self in relationship to community and wholeness, and the whole of what's going on in relationship to our personal self every day. So if you have any more questions, please email me, mayflowerbookshop@mac.com, or you can, send a donation to support this kind of research in books or whatever, money. And you can ask me a question and I'll try to get to it. So this is Robert of mayflowerbookshop.com website and on YouTube. And I have a song on Bandcamp that you can download. I'm going to start putting some more songs different places. So that's going to be cool. So bless your heart of community and garden and friendship and the romance of spiritual knowledge in our everyday moment. Robert of mayflowerbookshop.com, at your higher self service. Be well, be star, be still, be and become